So, thought I'd do a little vlog. Never even used the phrase vlog. First time for everything. I'm kind of bummed. So, this is a depressing vlog because actually I had my purse stolen today. And actually I was at lunch and we were all sitting around talking. I was talking about the CISPA, which not a lot of people seem to know too much about. I mean, they've heard the term, but they don't know what it means or why it's really, really, really scary. Because anymore, they just name all these things, CISPA, ACTA, SOPA, PIPA. It's like, what, it sounds like a really bad band from the 70s or something. But we were all sitting around talking. I was so engrossed by the conversation that I just left my bag on the floor next to my chair, like I guess somebody does, and it had everything in it, of course, that you don't want stolen ever. So my ID was in there, my car keys. I have an deactivated iPhone. I don't use AT&T anymore, but the phone I kept because I used it I used it to check the news. But that was in there, and I'm sure identification something in there probably has my address on it, of course, so they know where I live and all this. And it really stinks because it got me to thinking not just about, oh great, here's 25 new problems when I didn't have any. I gotta go to the DMV in the morning, which is always a wonderful thing to do, bright and early. Cancel everything, get all new stuff, prove I am who I say I am, and go through the whole bureaucratic rigmarole. But really, it really just brought me to the fact that I'm very dependent on technology, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that suddenly I couldn't buy a sandwich if I wanted to. I couldn't put gas in my car if I wanted to. I couldn't drive my car technically if I wanted to, because I could get pulled over, and then who am I? So everything was in there, and that just kind of led me to thinking, of course, after I got done being like, oh great, this really sucks, and being pretty sad about that, to just kind of thinking about the cashless society. Losing this little bag that had my whole life in it reminded me quite a bit of that movie from the 90s with Sandra Bullock, The Net. And she had the disc, right, and it had like a secret government program, and so they were all going to kill her. And so they shut off her information, and they said it's all about the information. I really think that movie's probably another one of those art imitates life instead of life imitates art kind of situations. So, but it made me feel that way a little bit. Obviously less important, but just in my own little bubble, but still, it's one thing to lose all that and be able to get it back, but it's another thing when it's all going to be converted to ones and zeros. I mean, even then it's still ones and zeros, but when it's all ones and zeros and it's all hooked to a chip, can you imagine the ramifications of that? Because I started thinking about it and I almost hurt myself. I almost gave myself an aneurysm thinking about it. The ripples of destruction that can come from that. I mean, we're already seeing money being tied to our freedom with, for example, the new IRS thing where if you owe so much in back taxes, supposedly then you can't leave the country. Which it started actually when they were saying it was for back child support. Originally, if you owed child support, then you couldn't leave the country. And how they got everyone to agree that that was good is because they gave this impression like, oh, what, that jerkwad's not paying his child support. He's going to go on a trip to the Bahamas or wherever, and so we got to shut him down. So, because he's not even paying for his kids' clothes for school, but he's going to go to, Europe, so what an ass, let's make sure he can't leave. And everyone's like, yeah, that makes total sense. That guy sucks, But now it's, well, you owe the IRS, which, freedom to fascism, guys, take a look at that and ask yourself if you really think that's a law break worthy of you not being able to leave the country. And if that's it, the thing here is where does that line ever stop? I hate to use the phrase slippery slope, but where does it end? Because it just keeps getting pushed back and pushed back. until eventually it's going to affect more and more people, more and more people, you know. I mean, now it's you owe this much to the IRS, you can't leave. Then it's going to be you owe, you know, $25,000 to the IRS, you can't leave. Oh, well, now you owe $2,000. Now you owe a penny. Now you just can't leave. You know, and then what's next? I mean, oh, you double parked for an extra half an hour, you can't leave. That, to me, is something they could do with this cashless grid. Because if you have ones and zeros, you don't have anything substantial that you can show for anything. You get put in a situation like I did, where you don't have anything to show. Now let's say you got goosebumps at the airport and someone thought you were a terrorist, so they told on you to Big Sis Napolitano, right? So they turn off your chip. Now you can't buy food for your children today because somebody thought you were bad enough to be put on a list. And we have so many lists now. We have like the no-fly list and the terrorism list, and I'm sure that regional areas have their own fusion center threat lists. And I mean, the list of lists goes on. And eventually, with the way that they're slowly tying these things all together, you know, it's going to encroach on more and more people until the tyranny is so big everyone can see it. And it's always in this guise, too, of convenience, right? Like, it's so convenient to be able to pay your bills online, and it's so convenient to just swipe a card whenever you need to buy something. You know, but it's not going to be convenient when everyone has the same chip, and that chip can be turned off and on based on what? There will be a reasoning behind it, I'm sure. You know, and if you don't like it, especially if it's a one world government and you don't like it, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to get in your spaceship and fly to Mars? Probably not. So, especially not if you can't afford it because your ones and zeros got turned off. So, you know, it's a very frightening prospect. I think that phrases like cashless society get thrown around quite a bit, especially by the media. I think sometimes they almost like to say these phrases over and over and over so they can just acclimate you to it. And you hear it so much, it kind of becomes a non-word, it's a non-phrase, you know? And you just dulled to it to where it doesn't really have any meaning anymore. But do a little social experiment on yourself, okay? Take your wallet or your purse and just put it in a drawer for a couple of hours and pretend you're patient zero on the cashless society, that, you know, the cashless grid, and that you did something bad enough to get your ones and zeros turned off, and then see what it's like for even just an hour. Because anymore, it's scary, you know? Anyway, something to think about, right?